Well, good afternoon everybody. We are back with the Volvo S1000 X-Andy Black collection. I haven't posted a video since the autumn, so we're going to give you an update, and we'll draw back and just get a shot of the lovely Jennifer up on the platform there. 3 combine harvesters and Jennifer. What more could a man ask for? Anyway, as you can see, the table or platform or header is now back on the machine. It was not an easy header to fit. I had a friend come over and he brought his wife, and it took 4 of us about 2 hours to get this table bolted back to the machine. And to give you some idea of how tricky it is, I mean, if you look here, you can just about see the bolts that hold the table on. You can see the bolts now because I've extended them. I extended that bolt outwards and the other one to make it possible to actually fit those. The table fits inside the bulk of the machine, so it's not an easy table to get into alignment. And if you remember, we installed winches on the platform, and certainly we would never ever have done it without the winches. So having put the platform on, we thought that our major problems would be over. We were absolutely wrong. Our problems are only just about to begin. The first being belts. Now, this machine had no readable belt numbers at all. We had nothing to work with. And Jennifer, could you pull that red lever for me, please? This particular mechanism here was a huge problem because it had seized up on the other side of the machine. And if you notice here, the bearing, again please Jennifer, pull it the other way. Can you pull the lever the other way, please? Right, you can see that working there. The bearing on the other side of the machine, and we'll have a walk round. Yes, the bearing on this side are completely seized up. And if you can operate again for me, Jennifer, please. You can see, and the other way, please. We freed it off in the end by using freezer spray to freeze the shaft, and that was sufficient to give us enough movement in the metal parts to get all that apart. It's most peculiar on this machine. There are so many points where you would appear to need grease nipples, but there aren't any, and certainly this was a case in point. And if you can possibly just see, I have now fitted a grease nipple to that, so if we can squeeze some grease in, we can keep the wet out. And that is now working. Now, because that had seized up years ago, what they've done is to fit short belts so that in actual fact, when the threshing equipment's working, the table worked at the same time without any means of separating the two. Now, with these long V-belts, it's very difficult to get the length if you haven't got numbers, and in nearly every case we've had to buy 3 belts. I had long discussions with belt suppliers over this, and they said, yeah, that's the way it is with V-belts. When you haven't got a number, you usually have to buy 3. 1 too long, 1 too short, and 1 that's just right. So our V-belts are now in place, and our next problem was this. This is the outrigger plate, which carries the bearings that drive the table. The plate itself was bent, buckled, warped, twisted, cracked, and all we could do with it was unbolt it, take it off and make a new one. But we did make some design improvements to it. As you can see, we riveted a piece of angle iron onto the end of it and added not 1 but 2 stay bars going into the centre of the table. And we added an extra angle strengthening piece horizontally just there. Then we had problems with chains, because this chain when the machine was built new, they didn't use a standard chain. We think that Volvo's made a mistake with the sprockets and then made chain to suit sprockets. They certainly didn't use a standard chain. After spending ages and ages with a calculator working out pitches and roller diameter, we eventually bought this chain over from America. It is not quite perfect, but it's close enough to work. And interestingly, an ex-Volvo combine owner told me that back in the day when these machines were in use, the standard fix, interestingly, to use an ordinary standard chain was to saw off every other tooth on this sprocket, which was an option we did consider, but I just couldn't bring myself to start sawing teeth off of that socket. So we went with fetching a chain from America. And I must say, although that sounds expensive, it wasn't, because we could buy chain in America for about a third of the price that we could buy it in Britain. So even when you added the postage on, it was really very affordable. This little chain, luckily, is standard motorcycle chain, and that was very easy to buy. And other than having to add half a link to it, we were in business immediately with that. Next problems was the rams that lift the reel. But in this case, we were fortunate. And although they spurted oil everywhere when we first tried them, the seals were a standard size, and it was very, very easy to fit new ram seals and get that working nicely. I was going to start the machine up for this video, but I thought it was better. We'll perhaps leave that for the next video and just do the walk around here. So we'll just take a backward step. We're still sheeted over partly after the winter, but that's of course because we've been working on the table, not the machine itself. The last major problem to solve, at least I hope it's the last major problem, is that we haven't got a knife. It's a 12-foot knife. We have yesterday, we did have a 10-foot class knife, and we tried a class knife in there and it slid in beautifully. And my brother is a friend with the combine dealer Robert Coles in Dorset, and Robert has assured us if we come down and see him, then he, from his stock of parts, will be able to sort us out with a knife. Now, I'm not expecting to be lucky enough to get the correct drive ball on the knife or the correct drive connection. We will almost certainly have to make up a connecting rod, but that doesn't worry me too much. That's a minor problem after some of the things we've had to deal with on this machine. So there we are. Things are looking a lot more cheerful now than they were. I'm not going to forget fitting the table in a hurry. We were losing the light that afternoon. My assistants only had 2 hours to spare, and we were frantically struggling on a lovely piece of smooth concrete with a nice trolley for the table to sit on. You could probably fit the whole thing in a quarter of an hour, but we didn't have the luxury of that. We had to work in the farmyard we're in. We're going to take a look upwards. We've got the cooling tower and the exhaust tower there. Those are tidied up and back together. We took them off more for the fact that it was easier to sheet the machine over with them off than on. But of course, once they were off, well, we just had to tidy them up and repaint them and make them look a bit smarter. I do feel that air intake is on a little bit of an angle, but I think we're going to have to live with that. And I suspect that's because the box at the bottom has been fitted slightly incorrectly. So we'll just wander down this side, and Jennifer will get you to work that red lever one more time. This was so difficult to fix, this little problem here, that I hope you'll excuse me if I just enjoy watching it work one more time. And again, please, Jennifer. Yes, as you can see, all new nuts and bolts. I hate rusty nuts and bolts. So anything that's come off of this machine has been replaced by new nuts and bolts. And we'll walk round, and you might just have slightly caught a hint of the Class combine in the background there. That's a toy that I bought in the autumn last year, but you're going to have to wait for me to shoot a video on that in due course. It's a one owner Class console, not the most common machine in Britain, and certainly pretty much unknown in Hampshire, where combines tend to be bigger. But there we go, draw back, final picture, give us a wave, Jennifer, my young and beautiful assistant up there, and we'll call it a day for now.